911 calls start coming in. The neighbor is beating his girlfriend. Then another call with a scream of death. A house begins to smoke. Where are the kids? Is he holding a hatchet? Join us as we describe the night a father chose a hatchet and a match. Please note that the content of this recording may contain graphic material including torture and explicit language may be used. The opinions are of my own and may be offensive to some listeners. They are my opinions. Everyone has them, and if you do not agree, then ignore them like an adult and move on. Listener discretion is strongly advised. Hey guys, welcome to the Raven Knocks. We've got another episode for you. I'm your host, Amy.
And I'm Jamie, your co-host.
And welcome back. I appreciate you guys liking and subscribing and following and telling your friends. We are growing, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. This episode is about a child, so if you have issues with that, you may want to skip this episode. And it's horrific, but I think it's important. Kids are hard for me. But I do think it's important to get their stories out here told, and also to let you know the people that are walking amongst you, also to make you maybe be a little bit more aware of paying a little bit more attention when you see that child in a grocery store or if she's sitting in your classroom, to kind of be a little bit more observant. But with that said, we'll go ahead and get started.
What's the address of the emergency, ma'am? What's the address? What's the address of your emergency?
Shot, help me, please.
What's your address?
What's your
address,
address? Stop me, help me, please. Stop me.
Where?
Oh no! What the?
Ma'am, hello, ma'am. All right. Ma'am, hello. Hello.
Oh no, this one fucked up thing is this ass, nigga. Not. Right now, come out here and help me kill this bitch. Now!
A second 911 call comes in.
What is your emergency?
Hey, I just been attacked by some white demons inside, and she tried to kill me. And
What's the address?
Huh?
What's the address of the emergency? Try to attack you?
Yes. She did. She tried to kill me.
So what is that he's saying in the background?
Okay, so the male's voice in the background, you heard him say Allah Akbar, which means God is the greatest. He also, his 911 call says, hell no, bitch. Why don't you sit the fuck down before I kill your bitch ass nigga right now? Come out here and help me kill this bitch now. So that's what he is saying.
We literally just witnessed the murder on the 911 call?
Yes, you just heard her getting beat in the head with a butt of a shotgun. And it's so severe that it completely deformed the shotgun.
Oh my God.
I don't know if you've ever, I know you have, I mean, we were raised around guns, but I don't know if you've ever seen a shotgun and the butt of a shotgun. I've never seen one deformed before, but they show it. It's deformed.
I mean, I have, but they've been old and been around and passed down for years and years and dropped in the woods and whatever, you know.
Yeah.
But wow.
Yeah.
Oh my God. That says so much.
Now, this is after he shot her in the arm. So not only has she been shot, but now he's beat her in the head with the shotgun. So I wanted to play the 911 call because I could not describe and give her scream the I don't know how to say it. The authenticity, maybe
Right. Well, it's hard to imagine.
a death scream,
Yeah, because it's hard to express in words the amount of fear
emotion. Yeah,
and emotion that's tied to such an expression. When you hear it live, it's so raw.
Yeah.
And knowing in the back of your mind
what's going on?
Yeah, that you just heard that.
Yeah. So that's what's going on. When officers arrived, they found a house that was on fire, and Kenyatta, which is the unfortunate precious soul that was in the driveway, she was clinging to life. She had been shot in the shoulder arm area, and like I said, he used the butt of the shotgun to beat the life out of her. She had 15 lacerations to her head, 7 skull fractures, a fracture to the base of her skull, several facial fractures, a fractured jaw, and she was missing a lot of teeth. And again, it was so bad that it deformed the shotgun. And that's one hell of a beating. She would later pass at the hospital.
So she was still alive.
She was still alive.
So we didn't witness. We witnessed the act of the murder, but not the finishing of her life. That happened later at the hospital.
Yeah, we listened to her as she was dying.
Yeah. Wow.
Now, they soon seen a man coming out of the garage covered in blood. And this would be Stephen O'Neill. And, he's the guy that is responsible for all this. It took several officers and a taser to subdue him. And once he was placed in the back of the squad car, he began yelling, Allah Akbar. And he was also yelling that Kenyatta was the devil and so were his children.
His children.
Yes. They had seen a young boy who was 8 years old emerging from the house, and he was holding his stomach. He was trying to hold in his intestines.
Oh my God. How old was he?
8 years old. He had been stabbed. He had also been burned. Burns had covered 30% of his little body. He was covered in gasoline. Yet, despite all of this, he was able to tell him that his father had killed his mother. Firefighters were having a hard time in the house. It was very hard to see, and they kept slipping and falling on something. Well, that something ended up being a 9-year-old little girl's blood. A firefighter found her and brought her outside and was totally horrified and scarred for life. There lay an unrecognizable little girl, covered in blood and burns. She had been hacked to death by a hatchet.
Oh my God.
A hatchet that was in her father's hands.
When they approached him?
No.
Okay.
No, he's the one that done it.
Okay.
The firefighter stated that he wept along with other firefighters at the scene. Like, how could you not? What made it so much worse is this little girl was born with cerebral palsy, so she had difficulty getting around. She would sometimes resort to a wheelchair. She was also severely autistic, so she was nonverbal. She couldn't run. She couldn't scream.
Oh my God, she had 0 defenses.
No one would be able to hear her silent cries. But her brother would boldly testify to seeing tears coming down her face when he saw his own father hit her in the head with a hatchet over and over again. The son, who was 8 at the time, was now 11, and he bravely took the stand. Not only was he taking the stand, but his wonderful father decided to represent himself, which is his right. So he was going to be questioned by the man who burned and stabbed him, killed his mother and his sister.
Oh my God, the bravery of that young man to face his own father.
Yep, as he chose to cross-examine him. Even though his father was gentle during this, so unlike his dramatic, loud, angry, aggressive opening statements, no matter how gentle you are, don't you think you've put this child through enough? I mean, we all know what you did. Kenyatta herself identified you on the 911 call and told them that you were trying to kill her. So why put him through all this?
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like it's all about you. You know, well, it's really all going to be about you, sir. Now, I'm going to play you just a very, very small portion of his opening statement. And when I say he was loud and dramatic and, you know, aggressive, those are just words. But you're going to hear exactly what I'm talking about. So I'm going to go ahead and play this clip.
The evidence is going to show that we are under some of the most vicious, iron, fabricating, fictitious government you ever seen. By the time it's all said and done, you will see who is the mass murderers.
Oh my God, I have never heard such a psychotic sounding human being in my life. I mean,
Well, let me tell you, when I pulled it up, and excuse my language, but I was like, what the fuck? I mean, like,
no kidding.
this is a court of law. Like, how are you allowed to act like that in a court of law? I mean, you're screaming and, like, forcibly, like, going at it with the jury. These are the people that's going to determine your fate, and you're talking to them like that?
And what Law and Order did you watch where that happened?
You know, they did mention that one of the commentators had mentioned he had watched every episode of Law and Order in order to pull this off.
Oh, he thought he was a self-made attorney
Yes.
from a TV show.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And let me tell you, when he had to actually perform the legal duties, you know, it was
Atrocious.
yes. He would ask a question and you would have to wait like 5 minutes, and I'm not even exaggerating. It was like 5 to 8 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it was literally like 5-8 minutes, and
Oh,
I'm
that's
like,
excruciating.
I'm like, come on, dude. I mean, no wonder this video is 2 hours long. I mean, shit. You know, just to ask a question. Yeah, it was awful. It was obvious that.
Can you
he didn't know what he
imagine
was
what
doing.
the council was thinking at the time? They're sitting there thinking, "Oh, this is going to be a long day."
Oh yeah, the dude had his pen, and I'm like, yeah, I'd be clicking my pen. I'd be like, dude, you know, just but yeah, that had to be painful. But the son, his name was redacted for privacy. He sat there bravely, along with his service dog.
Aw.
Her name is Tibet. She's a golden retriever. And I think that's great. I love dogs. He begins that saying that his mother and father had been arguing in their room about religion. It seemed that O'Neill wanted Kenyatta to convert to Islam. They were very loud and shouting, and when he looked outside his bedroom door and down towards their bedroom, his mother told him to get back into his room. Now, when he had looked down, he had saw his father holding a shotgun, and he recognized that shotgun because it stayed under their bed. At one point, his mother ran into his sister's room, which was right across the hall from his. His sister had been sitting on her bed. His dad told him to walk around and begin chanting Allah Akbar, which is God is the greatest.
Mm-hmm.
And so he did. He walked into the living room. That's when he hears a single shot. His dad called for him to come back into the room where he was, which was his sister's room, and to come kill this bitch, referring to his mother.
Wow.
When he came into the room, his father put the shotgun in his hands and held it with him. Like put it around it. And pulled the trigger and it fired. And he wasn't sure if it actually hit anything or not. Then his dad grabbed the gun and told him to go into the garage and retrieve a hunting knife. He did, but he was unable to find the knife. Thank God.
Yeah.
Which, I don't know.
This is religious extremists, too.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
I mean, both ways are bad, but I don't know. I think I'd rather get stabbed by a knife than beat in the head with a gun. I mean,
I can't even see that as a two-way street.
I know. He said he was standing by their house phone when his mom ran out of his sister's room and out the front door, and his father was running after her, and she still had the shotgun in his hands. His father wasn't outside for very long when he came back inside. And then his father dragged his sister out from her room by one arm into their bedroom. He watched as he hit his sister in the back of the head with a hatchet. Tears came from her eyes. Then he hit her in the head. He said he watched her eyes roll and blood went everywhere. He hit her in the neck, face, and torso. Once he was finished with the hatchet, he took a can of gasoline and poured it everywhere in that room and on her. He lit a match, dropped it, and the fire went up. He said he didn't remember if he closed the door or not. He then had him go to the garage and he had him to lay on his stomach. His dad then placed his foot on his back and poured gasoline on him, took a tissue, and he was trying to light a match when he got free and ran into the kitchen. His dad ran after him, cornered him, pulled out a drawer, took out a knife, and stabbed him. He doesn't remember exactly how he got burned, but 30% of his body was burned. He remembers looking out the front door to lights everywhere, so he manages to push himself up and get to the door. He finds someone, and the next thing he remembers, he's in the hospital. He had to have emergency surgery. He wasn't expected to survive. He still has to have doctor's visits for the injuries he received 3 years prior, but he was finally finished the treatments for his burns. Now, he remembers his dad calling on his cell phone and telling someone that he had just killed somebody, and this happened in the garage. That someone would be his stepfather. O'Neill grew up in a stable home. He went to church and was a member of the church choir. He also wanted to go to the Marines after high school, but he couldn't pass the entrance exam.
Wow.
But he's representing himself in court. He met Kenyatta, and they had their baby girl, but she was born with cerebral palsy and was later diagnosed as autistic nonverbal. A year later, little Ronnie was born, and him and his sister had a very close bond. It wasn't long before O'Neill and Kenyatta split up, and O'Neill went with another relationship and had even had another child. And Kenyatta was getting on with her life. She was working and going to college. She had a nice house for the kids, and everything seemed to be going great until O'Neill was involved in a drive-by shooting and he almost died. Well, no one would allow him to stay with them because they were afraid. But Kenyatta opened her home to him.
Wow. Thinking, this is my kid's dad, like I can't just let him.
Yeah.
Whatever. And she had to have thought, at one time I loved him. Mm-hmm. It may not be this way now, but I have a heart for humanity.
Right.
You can imagine.
Kind of tells you what kind of person she is.
Yeah.
She was kind enough to let him stay with her, and it wasn't long before he took that kindness and returned it by beating the life out of her, hitting her baby girl with a hatchet over and over until she died, setting her in fire, and taking her son, stabbing him, leaving him for dead, burning him, setting the house on fire that she had built for them. That's a nice thank you. Now, as you know, O'Neill was extremely dramatic in his opening statement. He was saying that the police had tampered with evidence because they didn't have enough to convict him, so they had to make it look like they did. And again, I had to do a double take, because I was like, where is your respect?
Obviously, he didn't have much of an intellect to start with. The religious extremists like that, they tend to be just all the way on one side.
Mm-hmm.
And they haven't done the proper research.
Right.
Or they would understand, and then he takes this, and if he had been allowed to be in society anymore, that would have expanded into other people.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Now, he wasn't, he grew up in a Christian home, and I'm not saying that Muslims are, terrorists or extremists or anything like that.
No,
because
he
they're
was
not.
an extremist.
Yes, he was.
They're on in every religion has extremists.
Exactly. And, it seemed like they wanted to make a big point in what he was saying, which translated into God is the greatest, Allah, in I think Arabic is God, and I do have friends that are Arabic, and she is the most, she's got the biggest heart of anybody I know.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have a guy that runs the falafel house, and
Yassin's.
Yes, and I tell you, this guy, what makes me sick is he comes over here from another country, and then us Americans damage and destroy his restaurant because he's foreign. But instead of getting mad, he'll put, he put a sign out, if you need a job, come in, I'll give you a job. When they stole money and stuff, if you need money, come in here. If you need something to eat, come in here. Like, he didn't retaliate. The way he retaliated, I guess, was by showing kindness.
Right.
And eventually, by doing so, his place grew, and he is known for his generosity.
Yeah. By the way, folks, if you ever make your way through Knoxville, Tennessee, you guys must visit one of the locations of Yassin's Falafel House. You have not tasted bitter tzatziki, like gyros, anything. You have to go to Yassin's. They are so awesome. Just a shout out to Yassin's Falafel House. And for all you people out there, at some point in time, you will come through the hub of Knoxville, Tennessee. If you travel, go there. It's worth it.
And the people there are great. Everybody's welcome. It doesn't matter.
Absolutely.
He's got this biggest heart, and it's like, Americans, hello. Why can't we be like that?
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, a lot of people, there's, think of the Christians that had the extremists, that committed the suicides and all that stuff that they done.
So what we're saying is they're Islamic.
Yeah.
Okay.
But again, religion to me, and it doesn't matter what religion you are, you could be an extremist. So this guy, regardless, he's just an extremist, and I tend to leave the religion out of that. But he even says GD in the courtroom.
It's funny how that happens, isn't it?
Yeah, of course the judge, she got onto him, but
throughout history, how many wars, at the surface of every war, there seems to be a God complex. In the name of God,
yeah,
we create violence and hate.
Yeah, it's crazy. But I forget, he ain't a lawyer. He's the lowest piece of shit on the planet. And because the laws are as they are, we have to listen to this piece of shit, to be fair.
Mm-hmm.
But
to be fair.
But how is it fair for the son, the daughter, the mother? They didn't even get a chance to state their case. They have to rely on others to tell us what they think happened. They can't tell you how it felt, what really went on, how it affected them, what they did or didn't do. Yet the ones who takes that away gets to spend all the time in the world saying whatever he chooses. He can make up whatever he wants, say good or bad things about the victim. And the victims can't say anything. And we can't say anything because that would make it unfair.
Yeah, but yet another reason why we do this podcast.
Yeah.
The voice to the victim.
Yeah. And they say it's unfair. Unfair my ass. The justice system burns my ass. It's so backward. I don't have a law degree. I'm just a simple redneck woman, but I can see, it's just unfair.
Disclaimer, It's not so redneck that we leave the lights on the front porch after Christmas.
True, I don't even have Christmas lights. But I grew up and our Christmas lights stayed on all year long.
Well,
So O'Neill was very angry that he was not allowed to hold the prosecution's piece of evidence, which was the deformed shotgun. Just good. I wonder if he wanted to relive that moment of power that he had when he took the lives of his family.
probably. This seems to be an MO of perpetrators, as we've learned.
One positive thing come of this case, an officer that responded to the call was only there to secure the scene, but he stayed with the child, a child that he had never met until that day. And when a social worker asked if he knew anyone that would be willing to adopt this little boy, him and his wife said that they would. And now he is adopted. He's very happy, stable, very loved, and in a secure environment. Now, the judge found him guilty after being out for 4 hours. They found him guilty of 2 counts of first-degree murder, attempted first-degree murder, arson, 2 counts of aggravated physically hurting a child, and resisting an officer. And he said he was not sorry for the things he did not do, and he was not sorry for the things that he did do.
Huh.
Yeah. Now, the judge roasted him in the very best way. As she stated, "This is the worst case I've ever seen. There is no way a normal person, after seeing the photos of your little girl, will not be haunted for the rest of their life. The cruelty of it all. Out of the goodness of her heart, Kenyatta, when you had nowhere else to go, she allowed you to come stay in her home, only for you to take her life and the life of her child. The scream on that 911 call, you ever want to hear a scream of death? Listen to that call. That is the scream of someone who knows that they're going to die. Your little girl was so special. You could tell that Kenyatta had done everything she could to create a beautiful home for her family. I noticed that your little girl's room, before you set it on fire, could tell that she tried so hard to make her feel like a princess. She did everything she could, and I noticed that on the kitchen refrigerator there were magnets that said faith, love, family, hope. And you know what else was on that refrigerator that night? It got splattered with blood. Blood all over it due to what happened. Your little girl couldn't scream. She couldn't run away. And she witnessed what you did to her mother, shooting her. She knew. And the horror that that child suffered. And she already had a life where she was born with challenges regarding her physical and mental disabilities. But the pain and suffering that she suffered that night at your hands is unspeakable. Absolutely unspeakable. At that moment, the first time you struck her in the head with that hatchet, and little Ronnie testified that all he could see was tears coming out of his sister's face, at that moment, that child knew. She knew that she was being betrayed in the cruelest, most tragic, and sorrowful way that a child could ever be betrayed. She was being betrayed by her parent, the one person that should be there to protect their children and love them and keep them from harm. That was the last thing that child felt before she passed on from this earth, was your utter rule of betrayal to her. I read somewhere, and I don't know if this is true, I have no idea, but I read somewhere that souls pick their lives, and they know exactly how difficult their lives will be before they enter into this world. I don't know if that's true or not, but if it is, your daughter is one of the bravest souls that I have ever came across in my 54 years on this planet. One of the bravest souls ever, because she suffered so traumatically. I will be sentencing you to the maximum that I can under the law. This is the worst case I have seen in my life, and I have seen horrible cases. Count 1, life without parole. Count 2, life without parole, consecutive to count 1. Count 3, life without parole, consecutive to count 1 and count 2. Count 4, 30 years consecutive to counts 1, 2, and 3. Count 5, 30 years consecutive to count 1, 2, 3, and 4. Count 6, 30 years consecutive to count 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Count 7, time served. During this roasting, he moved back and forth, couldn't be still, and was making a noise. I was waiting on him to blow up and make a scene, but he didn't. This story is horrid, and I hope he rots in prison. I mean, I hope he has nightmares every single night, and it tortures his mind every single day until the day that he dies.
Well, if he lacks empathy, that's unlikely.
I know.
But we can hope that that's the case, and that in some way that justice will be served by torture of his mind, knowing that he has to stay alive with that torture every single day. The truth is, he was the biggest coward in this story.
And not only that, I mean, if I have to take comfort in the fact that I know that if they don't get justice here, they're going to get justice later.
Yeah. So what happened to the little man?
So the little man, he got adopted by the police officer, and he is doing great.
That is awesome. What a story.
Yeah. So I am so proud of this boy, because the bravery, and when he was on that stand, you couldn't see him, but you could hear him. His voice wasn't shaking. He answered yes and no to his questions. He gave his testimony as to what happened, and he was unshakable. Like, you could feel his strength, and
that young man is probably going to grow up and do some of the biggest things.
I hope so.
I hope that he just creates a legacy that is unmatched in the name of his mother and his sister and his story, and that it serves to protect a group of innocent people in the future.
I hope so. I mean, we see a lot of people. Well, I mean, we see some that grow up that's been abused and become abusers, which I don't understand. I think that, I was abused as a child in a way, and I would never, ever do that to my child, because I know how that feels. So I really have an issue understanding how an abused child grows up to be an abuser, that it's hard for me to wrap my head around.
I think in some instances, there's just this core piece that is inside of you. It's born inside of you to either be a fighter and to make good, or make an example of the experiences that we have in our life, and we can either grow better or grow bitter. And that is something that you could possibly be born with.
Yeah, kind of nature versus nurture.
Yeah, it always boils down to nature versus nurture. Yeah. And that's one of the biggest questions that is in psychology today.
And that's a thing. I mean, this happens at, when he's 8 years old. That is a crucial time for a child.
Absolutely.
Especially, because the part of the brain, I think it's like
the
frontal lobe.
Cortex.
Yeah, is developing.
Cortex.
Yeah. And so that's a very pivotal time for a child. So, but I mean, he's in a really good home, and I know that they've got him in, really good therapy and stuff. So I really hope. And then there's a lot of people out there that have suffered abuse, and, they've turned out to be outstanding citizens, and they give back and they help other people, And
Godspeed to young little Ronnie.
Yes.
Thank you, Ronnie.
Yes. And that concludes this episode. This episode is brought to you by and sponsored by Southern Sass. If you haven't already, please like, subscribe, and share. We are on all platforms. And until next time, you guys be safe
Peace out, guys.